welcome to A Good Walk Spoiled, Adventures in Golf, hosted by Scott Ponywaz, also known as @Pony Golf. Happy spring, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Good Walk Spoiled. Thank you for listening, and thank you for joining me. I hope you are having a great golf season so far, and getting more golf in than I have been. I know it's been a slow start here in Montana just because winter had other plans for spring, and have had a couple snowstorms that have delayed some openings or closed the courses that were open back down, and put a bunch of snow on the ground, which makes it a little tricky to get out and get the golf clubs actually on the grass. I have had some opportunities to hit in the barn a little bit and some indoor simulator golf, but definitely itching for some outdoor golf. I'm recording this while I'm actually probably about to be getting back from Australia by the time you're listening to this. I am actually recording it pre-recorded a little bit. So that being said, I'm still on a little bit of a high coming off of the two-man Epic Club Golfers Journal event, which basically was the Kickstarter of the season. I had gotten a couple early rounds in here outside on the grass, but the Olympic Club was definitely a very high point way to kick off the 2024 season for me here, but hopefully it'll only go up from there. No pressure or anything. But I am about to be also heading into tournament season coming out of this Australia trip. So pretty excited to see what I'm up against here in Montana this year, and hopefully hit that target of getting below scratch and at least being competitive within the state AMs and mid-AMs. I'm by no means a plus handicap, so don't expect to win, but there is a little bit of flighting that goes on based on handicap, so perhaps in my divisions. So maybe I'll talk through some of the upcoming tournament season in a next upcoming episode. But for today's, we are going to talk handicap, and specifically some of the changes that are coming into play for how golfers can report golf scores for the handicap. The World Handicap System and the USGA RNA, they've all kind of come together and made some big significant changes that help a lot more golfers not only start to have a handicap, but also many people start to be able to put more scores in to make a more accurate handicap. So we'll get into some of those big changes. I think it's a great thing for the accessibility of golf. The handicap system, to be perfectly honest, has been quite skewed to the more exclusive, the people that have the means to have a country club membership. They used to require an association to a particular golf club or golf membership that you bought into, and many golf courses would only allow you to be associated if you had an annual membership with their golf course or golf club, whether they're public, private, semi-private. And so this opens the doors to a lot more people to access a handicap. The other sort of big win that's happened over the last many years in the handicapping system is that they even allow e-handicaps. And so many state, I think just about all of them now, actually, most state golf associations now allow you to just pay an annual fee for them to basically help you track your handicap, and for that system and software to do so. So you can just basically be somebody living in New York or New Jersey and sign up for an e-handicap program, and essentially you can go play any course if you don't have a specific course that you're associated with. So opening the doors to more golfers. So very exciting to see, and I'm very excited to dig in and share some of those changes, which are going to be helpful for those of you that have been lifetime golfers or are just getting started. And for that, I'm also going to have another segment that sort of talks about handicaps, how they're calculated, and why they do what they do and how they matter. So that'll be a fun first segment. And then the second segment, I'm going to roll into a sort of sleeper golf course, although it is one of the oldest in the United States. Excuse me. That is the Bedford Springs, the old course, which is at the Omni Bedford Springs in Bedford, Pennsylvania, out in the Allegheny Mountains. Just a fantastic track. You'll recognize a couple of the architects' names, so stay tuned for the Chips, Bites, and Flights segment when we dive into the old course at the Omni Bedford Springs. A little housekeeping before we dive in. Also, be sure to check out my gear on Millions. I've got some merch out there that they've helped me with, including the iconic A Good Walk Spoiled and Pony Golf logo gear. I was hoping all this stuff was going to be in, including the Holderness and Bourne custom golf shirts with the A Good Walk Spoiled icon logo on them. I was hoping that those were going to be here for me. Those are very limited edition because they're only for me right now at this point. So maybe we'll have to figure out how to get a couple more and maybe do a giveaway of some sort. So continue to like, share, and comment to help me grow this a little bit more. And then the other thing too is you can always find me on pretty much any audio podcast network like Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can also find me on golfergang.com. The Golfer Gang Network, we are a sort of consortium of golf podcasts around the country and talking about a bunch of different things. So check out those other golf pods on golfergangnetwork.com. And of course, find the video version of this podcast on YouTube, like the last one, which was talking about the technology that helped me get from a 15 handicap down to a near scratch handicap, as I'm sitting right around a 2 these days. That podcast, I did a couple demos on some technologies like Arcos and some other things in there, as well as the trip to St. George. So be sure to jump in over there, but I'm not going to bore you to death with all this intro stuff. So let's just go into the handicap world. Let's tee this thing off. And handicaps. Here we go on the World Handicap System. Welcome to another episode of A Good Walk Spoiled. And, those of you that are maybe new, it's a pretty generalist podcast, but, travel, adventure, and then amateur golf, as well as, a little on the latest tournaments and nuances of the game and all that kind of stuff kind of touch on. And so, we have gone into the history of the USGA and the R&A and some of the battles and golf rules over the years. I realize as we're all kind of kicking off the golf season, this one kind of slipped under the radar for me. I actually didn't even realize that this was happening. I don't know how it stuck through the cracks, but World Handicap System made 3 key changes for 2024 to the World Handicap System. And for the TLDL, too long didn't listen, or the TLDR, who maybe missed it just like me, I'm going to quickly summarize what those 3 key changes are, and then I'm going to go into kind of the handicap system itself and how it works. So grab your clubs and let's settle into to tee into these details. For those that are unfamiliar, the World Handicap System is basically the unified system used by it's now over 15 million golfers in over 80 countries. So it's basically like the common language of handicaps that allow for fairness and equity across the community for amateurs and pros alike. So what are all these revisions about? So the too long didn't listen, TLDL, I'm going to just quick bullet them out. course rating and shorter courses. So courses as short as 750 yards for 9 holes and 1,500 yards for 18 holes are now eligible for course rating and slope rating, which enhances the portability of a handicap index to make the system more accommodating and accessible for all players. So courses, par threes, various courses that otherwise were not eligible for course ratings are now eligible. And this is great because there are a lot of new fantastic short courses that are coming into play that like the Glen in Madison, my home area. The other one is Goat Park. I hope I got the name right. In San Francisco, in the Golden Gate Park area. Both of these are, not full 18-hole tracks, not quite executive tracks. They're a mixture of short par fives. I think there is a par four or par five on the Glen, but otherwise, I mean, they're mostly par three with a couple par four holes mixed in there. The other key change, so number 2, aside from the course rating and short courses, not to be confused with those, is the use of expected score differential for 10 to 17 hole scores. Many people nowadays just don't have the time to get out for 4-hour rounds, or the courses are so crowded nowadays where some of the public courses, a normal round of 18 can stretch into 5 or 6 hours. I mean, even well before COVID, I remember playing a round of golf at Van Cortlandt Park in New York City, just outside in the Bronx. And that round took about 7 or maybe even 8 hours to play. It was one of the longest rounds of golf. I don't know how I didn't walk off the course, but this new change allows you to do 10 to 17 hole scores, which if you didn't finish a total round of 18, you can still put it in, giving you more flexibility to score and then post that in that scenario. So even to, let's say a rainstorm comes in after 15 holes, you're able to still report that score to your handicap. So, again, many people don't have the time to get a full, 20 rounds in every season, much less, that 21st or whatever. And, it just gives more opportunities to report scores. The other one is for 9-hole scores, you no longer have to wait for a second round of 9 to report in your handicap. So those of you that are familiar with the handicap system, typically, if you played a 9-hole round, you would enter that 9-hole round, and then basically the system would wait until you played another round of 9 to close that open round of 9 out and turn it into a round of 18. So this allows you to basically have those combine and then allow you to count towards the index the next day. So it's placed on the holes that you've played, and then and with a expected score differential for consistency and fairness again. So all 3 of these new changes, the course rating and short courses rating system, and then the 10 to 17 hole scores being able to be added, and then the 9-hole scores not having to wait to be paired with another 9-hole score. This just really gives people a easier way to make a handicap more accessible. And so with these different calculations, it allows to some of these par threes to allow somebody who maybe doesn't have access to a longer course, like even as an example, over in Ennis, Montana, shorter 9-hole course. People play 2 laps for a full round of 18. Many will just go and play in 9 holes, but it's actually a great challenging course. I don't even know the slope rating or index on that course, but it is a very challenging course with very firm greens because of the winds out there. It just dries those things out and makes them speed. So one of the other areas of the handicap rating system is it also helps with the various sets of tees and ratings for different people or people that are playing different tees. So especially for those who might play 9 holes on the front and then another 9 holes on the back with blue tees versus white tees or vice versa, it can help with that for handicapping. So the other thing, maybe less relevant, but it also allows for a maximum handicap index of 54 for both men and women so that they remain meaningful and reflective, allow across all skill levels. And, it doesn't just make it, the 36 where people were not wanting to get a handicap and waiting to get a handicap or they didn't think they were good enough, but also opens up the door there. So really all of this, the whole goal is just to make a more unified system that's accessible to, not only everybody across the US, but also across the world where handicaps and course ratings and slopes and all that kind of stuff can now start to get a little bit more consistent and connected across the globe. So, pretty exciting stuff. And I think, with so much of the accessibility being an important thing for the game of golf, I'm pretty keen on all these changes. So with that being said, I guess the second part of this segment is how the handicap actually works. So we're going to kind of break that down, how a handicap is kind of calculated and why. So for those just sort of stepping into the game of golf and out onto the fairways for the first time, you might be wondering what exactly is a handicap and why does it even matter? So you can think of it as golf's great equalizer. So it's a way for golfers to essentially level the playing field and also allow golfers of different abilities to compete on an even footing. So one of the unique things about golf is that you don't have it with other sports. Like with golf, you can go play the exact same courses. Well, for the most part, you might have a little trouble getting onto Augusta or Pine Valley as an example. But for the most part, there are many courses out there where you can play the same exact fairways, same exact greens as a LPGA or PGA golfer. And that's very different from a lot of different sports. You can't necessarily go race the racetrack that an F1 racer is driving and use the same equipment. In golf, at least for the time being, you can use the exact same equipment that the pro golfers are using. You can use the same golf ball. You can use the same tee. You can tee up from the same exact tee box and play a golf course almost the same way that a PGA or an LPGA professional golfer plays it, which is, one of the most incredible things. And so with a handicap, it allows you to also play it on a somewhat similar footing, or at least compare yourself to that golfer based on handicap. So while you might be a more senior golfer that, as an example, is playing forward tees or a combo senior tee nowadays, you can still compete against, the 20-somethings that are still launching the ball 300 yards and still playing the same events and the same tournaments based on handicap and ratings of those particular tees and distances based on some sort of welcome standards within the game of golf. So at the core, your handicap essentially represents your potential skill level, indicating how many strokes you might need to complete a round of golf relative to a scratch golfer, someone who plays at the top of the game. So the higher your handicap, the more strokes you're allotted to reach par, which is often known as, like, say, your handicap. So making the game more enjoyable and competitive. So how is this calculated? And that's where the WHS, or the World Handicap System, does come into play. So it takes into account your scores from the recent rounds. It adjusts for the difficulty of the course, and then voila, your handicap index is essentially born. Of course, there's more to it than that. And so this is where we're going to really get into the weeds. And this is why I'm saying this is going to hopefully be interesting, not only for you golfers that are maybe new to golf, but also the longtime expert golfers, because some of this even I didn't know. Honestly, I've been one of those people that just plugs it in and voila, let the GHIN app take care of things. By the way, that's another controversy. Is it GHIN or GHIN? Let me know in the comments. It's sort of like GIF or GIF. GHIN or GHIN? Handicap. I like to think that the GH is a hard sound, but anyway, I diverge. Basically, the handicap is a calculation, numerical representation of the golfer's handicaps. We're going to go through a couple steps here. So the first step is score tracking. So calculating a handicap, you need to track a golfer's scores from recent rounds of golf. And these scores will serve as sort of the raw data used to assess a player's performance over time. Step 2, course rating and slope rating. So once the scores are recorded, they're adjusted based on the difficulty of the courses played. And each golf course has a course rating and a slope rating assigned by the governing body, i.e. the USGA or the R&A. And these course ratings represent the expected score of a scratch golfer or someone who plays at the top of their game on that course, while the slope rating reflects the relative difficulty of the course for bogey golfers, or those who typically shoot above par. These ratings are essential for determining the difficulty of the courses played, which in turn affects a player's handicap calculation. So on to step 3, and this is the handicap differentials. So after adjusting for the course's difficulty, the next step is to calculate the handicap differential for each round. And so the handicap differential is a measure of how well a golfer performed relative to their potential on a given course. It's basically calculated using the formula, which I'm going to pop up on the screen here for myself. So it's handicap differential, which equals, in parentheses, the adjusted gross score minus the course rating, in parentheses, times 113, and then divided by the slope rating. The adjusted gross score equals the gross score minus the course handicap. And the 113 factor is basically a constant used in the formula. So it's worth noting that a player's course handicap is derived from their handicap index and the slope rating of the course being played. So next part, the best handicap differentials. So to ensure fairness and accuracy, only a golfer's best handicap differentials from a specified number of recent rounds are actually used in that calculation. The exact number of differentials included in the calculation varies depending on the handicap system in use, i.e. the USGA versus some of the international handicap systems that are out there. So for the USGA, I think they use the best 10 of 20 rounds, and then they have a sliding scale up from there depending on how much golf that you're playing, where they'll use a particular number out of the total scores. So this helps prevent, just so you understand why they use the best handicap differentials, the outlier rounds. So if I go out and I have a blowout round and I shoot 100, but I'm typically somebody that shoots, the 75s, that's going to be a very significant outlier. They don't factor that into your total handicap. They basically throw that out. And part of that is to protect against the worst person in golf, the sandbagger. And so some of that is because of the sandbagger, but also to just give a more true number in golf, because and to that point, there are some differential numbers that are used to calculate someone outperforming their handicap in a statistical basis. For tournament directors, as an example, some of the tournaments that I play on, they do have mathematical calculations that will understand what a player's tour handicap is based on their rounds that they play in competition versus their USGA handicap versus what they shoot. And I've actually seen people get disqualified where they go out, they shoot out of their minds the round out of their life, the once in a lifetime kind of round, which can definitely happen. But some of the tours use a protection against that. And the USGA also will exclude significantly exceptional rounds. So if you typically are shooting 75, I'll use a 90. You typically shoot a 90 and you go out and you shoot a 65. First of all, those calculations, if you're a 18, 20 handicap, statistically speaking, you shooting a 65 is nearly impossible. And so that is why they have certain exclusions to prevent against some of that. So then that was the long-winded answer on best handicap differentials and why those are used. However, the next one is the calculation of handicap index. So once the best differentials are determined, that was a tough one to get out. They are averaged and adjusted to calculate the player's handicap index. The formula for calculating the handicap index involves taking the average of the best handicap differentials, which are those calculations that were basically adjusted score minus course rating times 113 divided by the slope rating again, and then multiplying it by 96% to provide a slight adjustment for exceptional scores, and then rounding them to the nearest tenth. So the handicap index, as an example, I'm right around a 2.5 right now, equals the average of my best handicap differentials. So depending on the course that I'm playing, that is multiplied by 0.96. So handicap index equals average of best handicap differentials times 96. And to give you an example of how that kind of works, as an example, I play a lot of tournament golf, and last summer I had a run of a few rounds where at the Montana State Amateur, I still shot, I think, like 76, 78 or something. And because of the way that the course was playing, both lengthwise, it was tipped out close to, I think, 8,000 yards. They also have some factors that the USGA uses for weather or abnormal course challenge, which can also factor in. But then also they basically rated it based on that particular tournament on that particular day, because it wasn't officially sanctioned Montana State Golf Association event. They actually had their own calculations on the difficulty and the challenges of the course based on pin placements and some other factors that were also aligned with the long distance of that course. So shooting a 76 or a 78, they were actually saying with some of the, playing conditions adjustments and things like that, PCC, which you might see sometimes when you do put your handicap in, for those that are experienced. Sometimes they'll have a +1 or a +2, as in like it's playing 1 or 2 strokes harder because of high winds or whatever those factors are. But with some of those rounds during that particular tournament, I think they actually factored in as a plus handicap, so a better than scratch handicap player, which meant that I was, much better. And that actually is when I came back from that tournament. I surprised myself with being in the 1 handicap range, even though I didn't actually shoot par. So that's another interesting thing, is if you play challenging courses regularly, you don't necessarily have to shoot even par to have a 0 scratch handicap, but you can actually be below by not even breaking par. So that is an interesting thing. So last but not least, there's the course handicap. So finally, the handicapped index is determined or can be used to determine a golfer's course handicap for a specific course. And the course handicap adjusts a player's handicap index based on the difficulty of the course being played, which allows for fair competition across different courses and tees. So a course handicap, again, using my story example, this is going to equal the handicap index times, in parentheses, the slope rating divided by 113. So basically it tells you that, okay, at your home course, you might be, 2 handicap, but at this particular course, you go and play Spyglass, your course handicap is actually an 8. So if you shoot better than 8 over par, you're shooting your handicap. So that's how the handicap system helps to sort of meet you at different places. And also, let's say you're playing even fun games between friends and your buddy is a 10 handicap, you're a 2 handicap, you'll give him a handful of strokes on specific holes, and that's a whole nother set on the scorecard. Each hole generally is rated from 1 to 18 on the golf course, and so if you have 8 strokes that you're giving your partner, which if you've ever played some match play that's handicapped or other club tournaments and things like that, if you're giving your competitor 8 strokes, then if you look at the scorecard next time you're looking at one and you see all those different random numbers 1 through 18 that look jumbled up, that's actually the rating of the hardest holes on the course according to difficulty. So then that person that gets the 8 strokes will get one on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 hardest holes on the golf course. And that's how you can kind of even things out and still have fun, even if you have 2 players at a different match. So if you end up hitting a bogey and they get a par on a hole that you pop on or get a stroke, then that means that you tie the hole. So it gives you a more level playing field in the game. So in summary, it's calculated by tracking player scores, adjusting for difficulty and the courses played, calculating handicap differentials, determining the best differentials, averaging, and then adjusting them to derive a handicap index, and finally adjusting the handicap index for the specific course being played to obtain the course handicap. It's a comprehensive process designed to ensure fairness and equity in the game of golf. And don't let the math scare you off. Thanks to all that modern technology, I'm not a math person, and all these user-friendly apps, calculating the handicap is easy. You don't have to pencil and calculate it all out there. I just thought it was kind of fun for many of us out there that have just always, put it in or are new to golf and don't understand how these numbers are calculated. So nowadays, with a few taps of your phone, even using Arcos now, it tracks it all. You just make sure all the numbers are accurate and you press submit and it goes right into the USGA GHIN app or GHIN. I'm going to start a fight here. It'll all start going in there. The most important thing, though, for you that are new golfers and also those that are sandbaggers, remember to always enter your scores for the most accurate handicap. It's not a vanity play. Enter the scores based on if you played well, if you played poorly. Also, just understand what qualifies as an eligible round. And, you can go to the USGA to figure all that kind of stuff out. But don't be discouraged if you have a high handicap, because when you play in events, it'll be accurate. You don't want a vanity handicap. Otherwise, if you play in events and, consistently are, saying you're a 10 handicap, but, you shoot 100 every time, then it doesn't matter for you. It's a tool to track your performance and also track your improvement. So you can use it, similar to some of those tools that I outlined in my last episode. So if you didn't listen to that one, go back, listen to the technology tools that help me improve my game. It's going to definitely help you. And GHIN app also lets you now track all sorts of other data, greens and regulation, fairways, all that kind of stuff. So you can even keep it right in their app. So yeah, let's use that handicap, embrace challenges, celebrate those victories, and enjoy that good walk spoiled. Take a quick break, and after we come back, Chips, Bites, and Flights is going to take us to a sleeper resort and golf course in Pennsylvania, designed by some of the finest golf architects in history. Hey, and today, thanks to Galway Bay, I am reviewing their new Renville rain jacket, which is super high quality, super high performance. They've got this great low profile neck, seam sealed for waterproof and extra windproof. The other thing too is it's got this great performance stretch fabric. They've got even all these little nice features like the waist cinch, also this great wrist enclosure, keep it tight around your golf hands. The other thing too is great zippers, waterproof pockets, including a nice little scorecard pocket here that's waterproof as well. Nice little added touch. The other thing too is it's a nice, light, soft, stretchy fabric, so easy to wear. I've been able to test it around Montana this spring. While the golf courses might not be open, I've had it out in a little bit of snow, sleet, rain, and been able to wear test it, and I can definitely attest the waterproofness of it. Also nice, sleek style. So, with the golf swing, most importantly, it's not going to inhibit that swing. So, have had a great chance to test it out. Highly recommend it if you want to get your own rain gear, either this jacket or others from Galway Bay. Be sure to use my link in my bio, or you can just use Pony Golf 15. That's PonyGolf 15, and save 15% on your purchases over at GalwayBayGolf.com. Omni Springs Resort in Pennsylvania is our next stop on this episode of, or I guess this segment of Chips, Bites, and Flights. For those that are new to the pod, Chips, Bites, and Flights essentially is our Adventures in Golf segment that takes us to various locations. I'm trying to keep them, at least for now, places that I've actually been and played, but down the line I might run out of places. So stay tuned on that front. But Chips, Bites, and Flights really aims to highlight the golf, play on words for the food section as well. Chips, Bites, and Flights, the food, and then the flights, getting there, the adventure. And so in this particular segment and this particular destination, I actually did the road trip from New York City. I think with traffic, it took me 6 hours. I think getting back, it was maybe closer to 4.5, 5. But Omni Bedford Springs is sort of in the of Pennsylvania, and it's home to one of the country's first golf courses. So if you look at the history, it actually dates back to 1895, and this restored historic course offers an experience of just honestly the highest caliber to rival the most private of clubs. It has breathtaking views of the Allegheny Mountains and the Cumberland Valley, and it just spans the work of 3 architectural masters, 2 of which I've also covered in prior podcasts. Actually, I don't think I've actually done a feature on Tillinghast yet as far as a deep dive. I've definitely talked about his architecture, his golf courses, but I actually have not done a specific feature on him. So that's coming soon, I think. I haven't even slated it or recorded it, so it's just totally me trying to keep all this straight. But those 3 golf architectural masters are Spencer Oldham, Donald Ross and A.W. Tillinghast. Donald Ross I covered on an earlier episode. These three are they basically teamed up to build the multiple holes on this, dating back to 1895. So how I came across this course, it's a theme. A lot of this is tour golf, amateur players tour. Some of the tour directors are actually Golf Week raters. And this course is sort of a sleeper as far as a golf course. It sits out pretty far out in kind of rural Pennsylvania. Bedford is definitely by no means a large city. It's a smaller town nestled away in sort of the rolling Allegheny mountain area. Many of you that live on the East Coast probably don't even, if you don't drive back towards the Midwest or anything, or drive outside of some of the main cities very often, you don't even realize that some of these bigger, steeper mountains exist. And this course was just a sleeper shocker to me, to be perfectly honest. I got out there and got to play several rounds, one of which was in the pouring rain, which was definitely less than ideal, but then the others were in a little bit better weather. So it made for some challenging playing conditions. I'd love to play it again on like a beautiful summer day where the weather is cooperative and the winds aren't necessarily gusting or anything, but it's just a fantastic course. The other interesting thing is that the tees even reflect the three designers, with the Oldham tees in the front. So those forward tees are at 5,100 yards. Tillinghast tees come around 6,000, so a little more in the middle tees. The Ross tees are at 6,450-ish, and then they tip out the metals, and those tipped out metals, I don't think we're even, we didn't play them. Sometimes we play a mixed tee. I can't remember if we played metals or the Ross, but either way, they usually kind of do a blend for the tournaments, but the metals tip out at 67.85. So historic, older golf course where the distances aren't killers. It's the greens that protect themselves. It's the undulation. It's the bunkering. It's the various streams and some water features on this particular course that can make you pay. And so the other thing too is it features a lot of the old Tilly and Ross signature designs. I actually am not as familiar with Oldham designs as far as playing them, so it's very much possible that his staples are definitely intertwined in there, but for me personally, they just weren't as recognizable as Tillinghast or Ross, where I played many of their different courses. But you've got some of these bigger undulating greens that can really crush you. You've got some other standard Donald Ross designs. So anyway, I digress. The Bedford Springs Old Course, they've undergone total renovation, and this was overseen by, of course, restoration architect Ron Force. He restored it to the original course layout. So honestly, it's just a must play. If you live on the East Coast, go out of your way to get over there. It's completely restored and historic, and so it just makes you feel like you're back there, except for obviously some of the more modern amenities. But features bentgrass tees, plush greens, well manicured fairways. They were extra plush because of the rain while we were playing, and then they also have a nice little practice facility as well. So as I was kind of alluding to, one of the more notable holes on the course, which is the fourth, and this is Donald Ross's volcano hole. It's renowned, and it's an original 1923 Ross hole. So it basically demands this steep uphill shot. I want to say I ended up hitting like a 4 or 5 iron or something, and I think it technically only plays about 160-ish. But you really have to drive or hit a very big shot up this volcano hole. You really can't see it, but it's also a tiered green, which also adds to the struggle. So it's a big tiered green, so you can hit it. It's a long shot, especially from the back tees. And now that I'm thinking back to it, we played one day of the tournament with like the farthest back tees, and then another day in a more forward tee setting, which also made a huge difference. I think I played the forward tee with maybe like a 7 or an 8 iron, and then had hit like a 4 iron up this big hill, which, you know, for a lot of players, they can't hit a higher iron, a longer iron with the loft. And so you know, it's this, yeah, narrow double tier putting surface, like I mentioned. And if you're on the front, like, good luck. You're and the pin's back. I 3-putted. I think I saw some people even 4 or 5-putt, because you're going up a pretty significant ridge, and sometimes it's challenging to get it all the way up and not have it come back down into a sort of secondary bowl on the green. I saw that happen to a couple people. Painful to watch. But, you know, to also put it into perspective, Gene Sarazen, famous historic golfer, he said a par 3 here is like making a birdie on a short par 4. And I couldn't agree more. Walking away on that hole with a par is a huge win. Walking away with a bogey is also a win. So the other thing is, I saw people hit irons too long, carry the green, and also get into trouble with some chip shots trying to come back short sided and stuff. It's, yeah, I just have to call that hole out. I loved that hole and hated it. But anyway, let's get to the travel portion of it all. So I personally drove, as I mentioned, but it's a little off the beaten path, and the old course at Bedford Springs is part of the Omni Bedford Springs Resort. Omni Hotels has a number of different golf destinations around the country, so usually runs a very top-notch resort. And so if you want to stay there, it's a luxurious stay. I know that they have packages as well for golfers. And it also has options for the family and some outdoor activities. There's even nearby fly fishing, which I'd actually pack my rod and reel around, but just with travel times and stuff, I didn't get some time, and also a golf tournament to plan. Didn't get a chance to actually try the fly fishing. It goes through a nearby town of Bedford. Bedford itself, the more like sort of main area, which has a couple of hotels, mostly budget. I think I stayed at like a Comfort Inn and Suites. There were a couple others. I think there was a Super 8, some others in town. It's about, 15 minutes away, not far by any means if you want to just stay there and then drive to the resort. A little more budget friendly. With some of those chains, there's also some chain restaurants and stuff. So for the most part, the resort itself has great food. I just ate at their sort of clubhouse. Burgers and stuff were great. But Bedford itself didn't necessarily have like big standout restaurants that I was able to go check out. But I did actually get to this place that is I'm going to say Jean Bonnet Inn, or it could be the Jean Bonnet, but I didn't want to confuse that with Jean Bonnet, the famous missing child story many years ago. But JEAN BONNET, so it could be Jean Bonnet Inn and Tavern. It's a great option and a great spot for dinner. It also is an inn as well as the tavern. I went to the tavern. I didn't actually stay there. I had heard rumors that perhaps it's haunted from the bartender. Whether that's true or not, take it with a grain of salt. But old colonial inn, so it wouldn't surprise me, especially since the inn is actually at the junction of the Forbes and Bird Roads, 1979 to 1815 by Jean Bonnet and his heirs. It was run. So in mid-1974, during the Whiskey Rebellion, embattled farmers met here and raised a liberty pole to protest the federal excise tax on whiskey. So apparently they used to use all their extra corn and stuff and basically distill it into whiskey, I learned in putting this episode together. And so there was this huge uprising from the farmers in this area to protest a federal excise tax on whiskey, which they were using to fund the Revolutionary War. So when they raised that liberty pole to protest the tax on whiskey, that October, troops called by President Washington, and supposedly President Washington also came here, they camped here on their march west to basically quell the insurrection, which was known as the Whiskey Insurrection. So a little bit of history as well in this area, which is pretty fascinating. But the tavern is super cool. I mean, it's like sort of old supper club style food. I mean, you're looking at like prime rib and baked potatoes and salads and all that kind of like classic Americana food, burgers, drinks. And so highly recommend if you can also stop at the John Bonnet Inn and Tavern. I'm sort of doing this because it's like, is it French? It is French, but it's, Jean or Jean or Jean Bonnet is the easiest way. But anyway, there you have it. That is going to conclude today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, and I hope you can make it to Bedford Springs and the old course at the Omni Bedford Springs Resort, because it's just a golfer's dream. I played it twice. I want to go back and play it again. So definitely add that to your golf bucket list. It's a sleeper course. Just fantastic, top notch. And hopefully your spring golf is kicking off strong and your handicap is trending in the right direction. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Subscribe, and I'd love to hear any feedback you ever have, so reach out. As I mentioned at the top of the episode too, I am accepting some applications for guests, so just find me on the Instagram. You can also find my email on my Instagram profile. Reach out to me and shoot me a note, and love to hear where you've been, where you're going, what your favorite golf destinations are. If you are an amateur golfer, if you're a pro golfer, if you're a golf instructor, if you've got any other wild stories in golf, like, how in a prior episode, Jonathan was on talking about fish and golf and how Fish Tour brought together a little bit of a mini golf tour for himself, as well as hosting and basically creating an event around the Atlantic City fish shows at Seaview. So take a look back at some of those previous episodes. There's some good listens in there, or good watches. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget, you can also find it on Spotify, Apple, all those good sites. If you're listening to the audio version, don't forget, you can also watch my maybe not so beautiful face and see some added tidbits on the YouTube channel. So thanks for joining again. Hit them straight. That concludes today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, Adventures in Golf, hosted by Scott Ponywise. That's myself. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, rate it high, and follow us on Instagram at pony_golf to stay in the loop. Catch you next time.